Hey everybody, welcome to Skills on Sunday for February 21st, 2021. I'm your host, DM Gallibond. Alright, now today, Skills on Sunday, we're going to be looking at a feat called Tavern Brawler for 5th edition. And as I was examining and studying on this feat, I realized talking about the feat in and of itself is not sufficient. Really, this is an entree to talking about the development in the rules throughout the editions of D&D for unarmed combat, namely wrestling combat. We're going to take a look at the whole idea of wrestling and unarmed combat through the lens of looking at the Tavern Brawler and see how those rules have developed throughout the editions of the game. So let's go ahead and get started on that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to look at this a little bit differently this week. We're going to start by looking at the feat, then go back and see how these rules apply throughout the various editions of the game. So, Tavern Brawler, accustomed to rough and tumble fighting using whatever weapons happen to be at hand, you gain the following benefits. You increase your strength or constitution score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You're proficient with improvised weapons. Your unarmed strike uses a d4 for damage. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike or improvised weapon on your turn, you can use a bonus action to attempt to grapple the target. All right, so that is what the Tavern Brawler feat gives you. Now, to understand how this works, we've got to go all the way back to original edition and, sort of begin to see the way these rules came into effect. An important thing to look at when we're thinking about this is a lot of the stuff that isn't written into 5th edition that is written into earlier editions that you as a DM can then use to inform how unarmed combats unfold. And if you have access to some of these sources, which are all available on a DM's Guild, by the way, you can buy all of them in PDF form, which makes it nice and easy to search them, then you can have some of these little cheat sheets that I'm going to show you to handle these situations where you might have unarmed combat or somebody has this Tavern Brawler free feat. Your characters walk into a bar and a big fight breaks out. All kinds of stuff that you can do to sort of make the fight more entertaining. So all the way back in original edition, they had a skill called wrestling. And what this wrestling skill does, in wrestling combat, a successful roll will give the character +1 to his wrestling rating. Higher skill scores give higher bonuses, so a character with wrestling +1 would receive a +2 bonus, and so on. So now if we go to the wrestling rules, unarmed character grabs a victim and tries to hold him, pin him, bear him to the ground. This is called wrestling. Anybody can wrestle. When a character attempts to wrestle an armed opponent always wins the initiative. Now, there's wrestling ratings. Very, very complicated. I'm not going to really go through this because it's very archaic, and if you're not playing original D&D, that doesn't really help you a whole lot. But what does help is the wrestling procedure, and this is something that's kind of was written into the original edition rules that has kind of gone out, but it can be a fun way of guiding if there's an unarmed combat, how that goes. Basically, there's a 4-step procedure or 4 stages of wrestling. And if you win 4 rounds in a row, you can get all the way to either removing a condition or winning a condition. So both combatants start off as free. Then if, let's call them combatant A and combatant B. Both A and B are free to begin with. Let's say combatant B wins the first round. Well, then that means that he has combatant A grabbed. And in this edition of the rules, grabbed has certain connotations. If B wins a second round in a row, that means he has scored a takedown and he's taken opponent A down to the ground. So now opponent A might be considered prone. In 5th edition parlance, grabbed might mean you have him grappled. The second win in a row means you have them prone. The third win in a row means that you have them pinned, which might mean in 5th edition that you have them immobilized. And then once you have them immobilized, you could see about perhaps, restraining them or something like that. So you could adapt these rules, and with somebody that has that Tavern Brawler feat, you could give them some bonuses on this. Now, there are some striking rules on this, and again, there's striking procedures that go on, and it's a long and complicated procedure. There's opportunities to score knockouts, striking and combat maneuvers, striking with 2 weapons. And then there's kind of optional rules, punching, and then using strength. So if you there's also rules for boxing here that you can use. So the basic level of mastery is you do 1 point. A specialized level of mastery, you do 1 to 3 points if you're an expert. You deal 1d4 plus 1 for every punch. If you're a master, a punch will do 2d4 damage, and a strike will do 1d4 plus 1 damage. And then if you're a grandmaster at boxing, a punch will do 3d4 damage, and striking will do 2d4 plus 1 damage. So here's some kind of interesting things that you can use with this Tavern Brawler feat as well. And notice this objects in hand. A striking character may wear a cestus or carry a small heavy object such as a pouch full of coins. If he does so, his strike does normal strike damage, but if the victim must save to avoid being knocked out, he takes a -2 penalty on that save. So it doesn't give you more damage, but it gives you a greater chance of knocking the opponent out. So something to think about, maybe. Now, if we go into AD&D or first edition D&D, we've got to look at the DM's guide for this. Variable applicable to all pummeling, grappling, and overbearing attacks. So you can do pummeling here, aimed at battering an opponent into unconsciousness, can be done with fists or dagger pommel or an improvised weapon. And then a base score to hit. Now, you wanna know what all of this. Again, this has very, very complicated formulas here to do all of this, which is interesting. And then you have, but what's most useful for 5th edition conversion is thinking about how you can apply different conditions. So thinking about the attacker's strength. using a wooden butt or a mailed fist. That might give you a +1. It's 5%, so that translates to a +1 on a d20. Using a metal pommel, +10%, so that might be a +2 on the attack. If the opponent is slowed or stunned or helpless, those could give you additional bonuses. And then things like active defenders. So, what if the defender is wearing armor? How would you adjust? And based on the type of armor, based on whether it's magical armor, and based on whether they have a helmet or not, that could be something. Uh, and then if you're talking about punching and pummeling, here's some really interesting uh, here's some interesting uh, descriptive ways that you can talk about um, either attacks that strike or attacks that miss. You could have an ineffective blow, and if it's a really bad thing, then maybe the opponent can counterattack. Um, Glancing blow, solid punch, or crushing blow, those types of things. And then similarly, you have uh, all of these adjustments to your grappling, which is essentially your wrestling attacks. And it depends on whether the defender is wearing armor. It depends on the dexterity of the person attacking. Um, and the conditions that are applied to the opponent, and it even gets down into talking about like the weight difference between the attacker and the defender. And then here's a grappling table, and once again, some nice descriptive terms to talk about the kind of attack that you have. So there's a waist clench, an arm lock, forearm elbow smash, hand or finger lock or a bite, a bear hug or a trip, headlock, a flip or a throw, stranglehold, headbutt, kick, kicks, knees, gouges, all of those types of things that you can look at if you're doing unarmed combat, wrestling, punching, those types of things. Now, in second edition, we also have punching and wrestling. Then this is an attacker's table, or no, I'm sorry, a defender's table. When you're oh no, I'm sorry. My apologies. This is the attacker's table. Normal armor class of the target is used if a character is attempting to wrestle in armor. Modifiers on table 42 are used, and there are penalties to the foe's attack roll. So if you're wearing studded leather, you take a -1 to your attack roll. Chain ring and scam mail -2. Banded splint and plate -5, etc., etc. Um, and punch and damage. Now, here's a really super interesting um, table that gives you a bunch of different ways of describing your punching and wrestling. So, your Tavern Brawler, this table 43 here from the second edition Dungeon Master's Guide, which is on page 85 of that book. Uh, Whether you're involved in like a fight where people are punching each other, you've got haymakers, wild swings, rabbit punches, kidney punches, glancing blows, jabs, uppercuts, hooks, kidney punches, combinations, all that kind of stuff. And then wrestling, you've got bear hugs, arm twists, kicks, trips, elbow smash, arm lock, leg twist, leg lock, throw, gouge. Uh, and others that you can use to describe these combats. Those are things that are like really interesting that you can uh, that you can add to make your uh, unarmed combat more visual. All right, and then in third edition, you have grappling, and third edition grappling just was a catch-all term for wrestling and struggling hand to hand. And grapple checks. You had size modifiers, and again you had a several stages. You would grab, then you would hold, then you would maintain the grapple, and then consequences. Uh, if you're grappling, things that are harder to do. Um, it's a it's a little bit they're a little bit less detailed here. I think probably I like out of anything in these other previous editions, if you're going to bring something forward, probably out of second edition, this table here that gives you all the kinds of different punches and wrestling moves that your characters could do is good. And then, of course, they talk a little bit in here about some details of um, these different kinds of attacks and what they do. And then, obviously, in fifth edition, we go once again to the unarmed combat, the grappling, and these types of things. So you have uh, grappling. You can use attack action to make a special melee attack. Uh, Target of grapple can be no more than one size larger, and you must be within your reach. And you make a strength athletics check against the target's athletics or acrobatics check, whichever is better for them. And then grappled creatures, you have a bit of control over them, and then you can sometimes work at getting towards having them incapacitated as you deal more and more, or the grapple goes on longer and longer. All right, this is kind of a way that you can go about adding a little bit of flavor to the Tavern Brawler feat. Chances are, if you have a player that really wants to do this, they already have an idea of what they want to do. Um, maybe they just have this feat because um, they have a background that their character was a troublemaker and got arrested for having too many bar fights. And then somewhere along the way, they had a choice of they either got conscripted into the army or they were going to do a lot of jail time. And they kind of learned some military discipline and skills, and that led them to a life of adventure after the army. So maybe that's how they explain having Tavern Brawler as a feat. And they probably have an idea then of what they want to do when they start using that feat for unarmed combat. But if they don't, if they just think it's a cool feat and they want to do it and they need some help, I hope that this has shown you by looking at past editions of the game how you can sort of help them to flavor that. Or if you know they want to do uh, hand-to-hand combat, unarmed combat with a lot of the enemies they run into, then this can give you as a DM a way of sort of describing that combat in a way that's more interesting than, oh, well, they just missed. Or you just missed. It's like, oh, they connect with a kidney punch, or they do a wild haymaker that just just grazes you and misses connecting solidly, or they throw you with a certain type of leg sweep, a takedown, or something like that. So um, just a little bit of ways of making those fights more cinematic for your players and more entertaining uh, for your group as you go into these types of things. All right. That's going to do it for our discussion of the Tavern Brawler Feat. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, click the post notification bell so that you get notified every time new content drops on the channel. And in the description, you will find all the information about how to follow me on social media, as well as where you can catch the live streams that I do 4 times a week over on my Twitch channel. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Hope we'll see you back here next time for Skills on Sunday. Everybody, take care and good night.